16 AI agents just built a working C compiler from scratch. 100,000 lines of code for $20,000. That's less than 1 month's salary for a senior compiler engineer. And it doesn't just compile toy programs. It compiles the Linux kernel. Meanwhile, Databricks just revealed that 80% of new databases on their platform are no longer being created by humans. They're being created by AI agents. A year ago, that number was 30%. These are two stories from the same week, and they paint a picture of a shift that is happening right now, faster than almost anyone predicted. Nicholas Carlini, a researcher on Anthropic's Safeguards team, wanted to stress test something. Not a single AI coding assistant, but a coordinated team of AI agents working together on a genuinely hard engineering problem. So he set up 16 instances of Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.6 model, each running inside its own Docker container, and gave them one task: build a C compiler from scratch, written in Rust, capable of compiling the Linux kernel. No human was pair programming with them. No one was reviewing pull requests in real time. The agents picked their own tasks, coordinated through Git, resolved their own merge conflicts, and kept going. Over the course of roughly 2 weeks and nearly 2,000 Claude code sessions, these 16 agents consumed 2 billion input tokens and generated 140 million output tokens. The total cost came to just under $20,000. The result is a 100,000-line Rust-based C compiler that Carlini calls CCC. And it actually works. It can compile Linux 6.9 across x86, ARM and RISC-V architectures. It can also compile QEMU, FFmpeg, SQLite, PostgreSQL, and Redis. It achieves a 99% pass rate on most compiler test suites, including the notoriously difficult GCC torture test suite. And yes, it can compile and run Doom, which at this point is basically the universal benchmark for whether anything actually functions. This was a clean room implementation. Claude had no internet access at any point during development. The compiler depends only on the Rust standard library. It is not a wrapper around an existing compiler. It was built from nothing. A C compiler is not a to-do app. It is not a chatbot skin. It is one of the most complex pieces of software that exists. A program that translates human-readable code into machine instructions across multiple processor architectures, handling thousands of edge cases, obscure language features, and platform-specific behaviors. The fact that AI agents built one that actually works changes the conversation about what agentic coding can do. But here's the nuance that matters. This was not fully autonomous. Carlini described the process as requiring deep human management and oversight. Someone had to architect the system, define the task boundaries, monitor progress, and intervene when agents went off track. The agents were extraordinary executors, but the strategic thinking, the project management, the architectural vision, that was human. This is important because it sets realistic expectations. The $20,000 price tag is remarkable, but it bought execution, not judgment. It's not that AI replaced the engineering team. It's that AI dramatically amplified what one expert researcher could accomplish. And that amplification, turning one person's vision into 100,000 lines of working infrastructure code in 2 weeks, that is the real story here. The compiler has real limitations. It can't boot Linux on its own because it lacks a 16-bit x86 mode. It still calls out to GCC for that. The generated code isn't very efficient. And the Rust quality, while functional, is far from what an expert programmer would produce. But the trajectory is what matters. Watch for whether Anthropic or open source contributors push this compiler toward production viability, and whether other teams replicate this multi-agent pattern on different complex engineering problems. So AI agents can now build infrastructure-grade software for the cost of a used car. That raises an obvious question. If the cost of building software is collapsing, what happens to the entire industry built around selling pre-built software? That's exactly what Databricks CEO Ali Ghodsi addressed this week, and his answer might surprise you. There's a popular narrative in tech right now that goes something like this: AI coding tools, sometimes called vibe coding, will let anyone build a clone of any SaaS product, and that will kill the SaaS industry. Databricks CEO Ali Ghodsi thinks that narrative is wrong, not because AI won't disrupt SaaS, but because the disruption will look completely different than people expect. In an interview with TechCrunch this week, Claude AI dropped a statistic that should stop anyone in the software industry in their tracks. Over 80% of the databases being launched on Databricks right now are not being launched by humans. They're being launched by AI agents. A year ago that number was 30%. Claude AI predicts it will hit 99% within the next 12 months. Think about what that means. Databases are the foundation layer of virtually every application. And at Databricks, a company valued at $134 billion with a $5.4 billion revenue run rate, the vast majority of new database instances are being spun up autonomously by AI agents building applications through vibe coding. Those applications need data storage, and they're defaulting to Databricks. Claude AI's argument is that SaaS won't die because someone vibe codes a Salesforce clone. It will become irrelevant because the entire user interface layer, the dashboards, the buttons, the workflows that define the SaaS era, will be replaced by conversational AI and agents executing tasks through natural language and APIs. People won't spend their careers mastering Salesforce or ServiceNow or SAP. The products become invisible, like plumbing. Databricks is positioning itself for this shift with two key products. Lakebase, a managed Postgres-compatible database that went generally available in February 2026, designed specifically as a short-term memory layer for AI agents, and AgentBricks, their platform for building production-grade AI agents that work with proprietary enterprise data. The 80% number is not a prediction. It's not a forecast. It is a measurement of what is already happening at one of the largest data platforms in the world. And it reframes the entire vibe coding debate. The popular fear has been that vibe coding would create a flood of cheap SaaS clones that undercut established players. Claude AI is saying something more fundamental. Enterprises won't switch from buying SaaS to building SaaS clones. They'll shift from buying hundreds of SaaS applications to building millions of bespoke internal applications, custom tools generated by AI agents, tailored to their specific data and workflows, running on infrastructure platforms like Databricks. Databricks co-founder Reynald Dixon put it plainly, the last 10 to 15 years were defined by the proliferation of SaaS. The next era will be defined by the proliferation of in-house application development. That's not SaaS dying. That's the entire paradigm of how enterprise software gets built and consumed being rewritten. And the bottleneck shifts. It's no longer about whether you can build the software. It's about whether you can manage, govern, and secure the autonomous systems that are building it for you. Watch the adoption curve of Lakebase and AgentBricks closely. If Claude AI is right about 99% of databases being AI generated within a year, that means Databricks is essentially betting its future on being the default infrastructure layer for autonomous software creation. Also watch how traditional SaaS companies respond. Do Salesforce, ServiceNow, and SAP lean into agent-native interfaces? Or do they get bypassed entirely? The answer will define the next decade of enterprise software. Here's the question worth sitting with. If AI agents can build a compiler in 2 weeks and are already creating 80% of databases at a $100 billion company, what does a software engineering team actually look like in 2 years? Not gone, but fundamentally different. If you want to stay ahead of these shifts, subscribe. We cover AI and tech news daily. See you in the next one.